Margaret Newman is the Executive Director of the Municipal Art Society of New York. At the Municipal Art Society, Ms. Newman provides leadership for advocacy, planning, and community engagement projects. Prior to joining MAS, Margaret served as Chief of Staff at the New York City Department of Transportation, where she provided direction for major agency projects such as the capital construction plan for Times Square, which included design oversight with a focus on sustainable design. Ms. Newman developed the Street Design Manual, which was instrumental in setting consistent design standards for the city's streets and sidewalks. Margaret's work on developing and implementing the city's green infrastructure initiatives included new standards for the use of sustainable materials and LED lighting across the 5 boroughs. And in talking with Margaret and getting a chance to meet her and know her a little bit better this morning, I found out that she really does walk the walk. She's an avid bicyclist and a regular user of the rideshare program in New York City, as well as in many of the other cities she visits around the country. So how about a nice warm welcome for Margaret Newman?
So, first of all, I'd like to thank Joyce, where are you, for inviting me here. This is actually my 3rd trip to Michigan in less than a year, so I won't go into all the other reasons I was here, but one of them was to go to Detroit to do some work there with the planning and design in that city, and then actually, I will, full disclosure, a college trip for my daughter who is not at school in Michigan, but anyway, So anyway, I wanted to thank Joyce for inviting me here. Joyce and I were colleagues, a little awkward. Joyce and I were colleagues in New York City working for Mayor Bloomberg, where I was for almost 7 years. So anyway, I wanted to, first of all, I did thank Joyce, and we had a great run at the City of New York, and I'll talk a little bit about some of the work that I did there, but I wanted to tell you a little bit about the organization that I'm working for now, which is called the Municipal Art Society. And we don't have actually a lot to do with art, but I think the original name of the organization is really important to some of the things that we're talking about today. The organization, it's a nonprofit, it's about 120 years old, and it was formed actually before New York City was incorporated and had a great deal to do with actually forming New York City's government and current configurations for the landmark preservation and also for cultural affairs and for the design commission. So what we do is we're an advocacy and planning organization, and we're dedicated to strengthening the city's physical, social, and economic fabric through urban design and, most importantly, civic engagement. And it was originally started by a group of architects and planners and artists, hence the name Municipal Arts, which was a reference to, back in the end of the 19th century, people viewed the notion of the municipal arts as the sort of practical arts, which included architecture and planning, and also wonderful public sculpture and public monuments. So we have that great legacy. So our work now includes everything from maintaining the city's monuments and murals. We have a program where we do that. Advocating for government reforms that protect and enhance neighborhoods. We conduct walking tours that promote quality urban design. And I'm going to be talking about some of the designing and creating vital urban places at a variety of scales, local, neighborhood, citywide, and regional. And I'm going to talk, it's annoying me, I'm sure it's annoying you too. So first of all, I wanted to talk about some of the work that I did with the New York City Department of Transportation, where, as Mike mentioned, I was chief of staff. And it's quite a large agency, having charge of the 26% of the city's real estate, which in New York City translates to about 121 square miles. So that's sidewalks, streets, lighting, signage, and all of the things that are in the public right-of-way. And I think Lansing, Michigan's about 37 square miles, so that's just, so it was about 3 times as much area. So I hope that some of the examples that I'm going to talk about in New York City can serve as a model for other cities and communities. So what makes a successful place? Oops. I think we have a sense of what works. There are certain buildings, parks, intersections that bring meaning to our neighborhoods and provide tangible and intangible benefits, making a city a city. One working definition is that a successful place is one which attracts a diverse set of users. It helps spark social, cultural, and economic enterprise and contributes to a sense of community and collective citizenship. Another definition of urban is it allows us to do together what we cannot do alone. So small businesses, transportation hubs, parks, libraries, coffee shops, and bars, New York City is full of such places, and they're really part of our notion about what makes a successful place. So places form a network of civic infrastructure that makes a city vibrant, dynamic, and successful. And with more and more people moving to cities, not just in the United States, but throughout the world, there's a need to ensure that we take steps to protect and enhance successful places within the urban fabric. In a dynamic city such as New York, which is constantly inventing and reinventing itself, how do we maintain authentic places and introduce new ones amidst the frantic pace of development? And I think this is a question that all cities are asking themselves right now. So what do we use streets for? They perform many functions at once, and there's a lot potentially happening on a busy city street. When you allow some of the less traditional parts of that to flourish, you start to see some really interesting places develop. Streets also pose many challenges: pollution from cars and automobiles, traffic that slows down productivity, and street design that prioritizes cars over people, which can endanger pedestrians. And as we saw in Richard's earlier presentation, sometimes it doesn't even allow people to get from point A to point B in an efficient manner. So at DOT, we met these challenges through innovative means, reconfiguring roadway space, repurposing and actually reimagining ways that the 26% of public space could be utilized. So like Los Angeles, I think we probably did this before Los Angeles, but anyway, we conducted short-term experiments to be tested and refined before embarking on longer-term, more permanent upgrades. This is a photograph of summer streets, which this was our 7th year in New York City, where we closed Park Avenue from the Brooklyn Bridge all the way up to 72nd Street for 3 consecutive Saturdays in August. And this became a new public space that allowed New Yorkers to experience the streets differently, not just as a conduit for cars, but as a place to gather and enjoy other activities. And it's hugely successful, and I believe that next year the city is going to try to take this out into some of the other boroughs, of which there are 5 in New York, for those of you who don't know how the city works. So the response was overwhelming, and so much so that it's become an annual summertime event. There were 300,000 people. The inspiration for this actually was the Ciclavia, which took place in South America, and they're all over the world. So New York was actually late to that game, and Los Angeles was after that. And so and I'm sure you have some wide streets here that look like they would be very appropriate for that. Rollerbladers, dog walkers, unicyclists, everyone was out there on the street. So we also expanded the city's bike infrastructure. DOT, during the time that I was there, created an additional 350 miles of bike lanes, which more than doubled the existing bike network. And the intention with the bike network, the most important piece that we found was the connectivity piece, which means that if you have a mile of a bike lane and then you have 5 miles of no bike lane and then another 5 miles of a bike lane, it doesn't do you much good because you can't get from point A to point B. So what we did was to try to connect both up and downtown, crosstown, within various boroughs to provide ways for bicyclists to get from various destinations, and also to make it be a kind of active transportation which would allow people to get to work. And what's been very interesting with, we implemented the City Bike program, which has 6,500 bikes in 300 stations, and the program is supposed to be expanded. Great. All right. So, so the City Bike network. First of all, the bike lanes had to be in place so people could use this. But the goal was to put this system in and create another form of active transportation. So this wasn't just a recreational, for recreational use, which people do actually use it just for fun, but it was to actually connect points where there was no transit available. So in other words, there are places the subway doesn't go, buses don't go, and it allows you to get off the subway if you need to get to the East Village, which is very far away from transit. You hop on a city bike and you take it to drop it off by your house. So it works very well in the places where it is. It's been tricky to fund and expand the system, but I'm not in the administration right now, so it's not actually my problem to figure out, which is kind of a nice relief, because this was a bear to get out there, I have to say. So the City Bike was helpful in reducing, believe it or not, when we add bike lanes, it makes the roads safer. I think we found this universally to be true. Traffic accidents go down. Bike ridership is at an all-time high. And City Bike has about 36,000 rides a day in the city. So it's had an extremely positive impact on the city. The other thing that the bike network helped with, and incidentally, City Bike is not in the Bronx yet, much to everyone's dismay. But the South Bronx has New York City's highest rate of childhood asthma and one of the lowest car ownership rates in the city. So bike lanes were introduced there, and to make cycling more attractive and a safer alternative to polluting cars and buses. And cycling rates went up immediately, and as it has citywide, and it helps knit together areas of the Bronx. We've had anecdotally people in the communities talk about how it allows them to get from one part of the Bronx to the other. And so I think it's been really key in both helping with some of the health issues there and getting people out safely onto the streets. So one of the most high-profile projects that I worked on, which Mike mentioned, was the work in Times Square. And it was, I guess, high-profile placemaking is how we could talk about it, at the crossroads of the world. There are 350,000 people a day walking through Times Square, and the image on the left shows Times Square before we made the changes, and you can see there are many, many people walking in the streets. Pedestrians were 86% of the traffic through Times Square, but only 11% of the public space was given over to them. So they would walk everywhere. The accident rate was very high. Vehicle-related injuries were more than 50% greater than they are now in Times Square. So it was pretty much total chaos. I can attest to that. So as a pilot project, DOT closed the area on Broadway to traffic and opened it to pedestrians. And we added more than 56,000 square feet of public space. And the project was a huge success. The number of pedestrian injuries decreased. Traffic congestion was alleviated. I think mostly because many people chose not to drive into Times Square because it was so difficult to drive there then. And I think there was documented huge economic returns for all of the businesses which were located around Times Square and had increased pedestrian traffic. Just something to be said about this as a pilot project. That was something that we initiated during the time that I was at DOT, and it was one of the things that, as architects and planners, that we tend to do is to we have lots of good ideas, and sometimes it's very hard to get them out there. Change is very, very hard, as you all know. And so how do you do something quickly without going through all the normal channels and headaches that you have to do to build something? Building projects, as you know, takes a very, very long time, and planning them. So we came up with ways, with a toolbox of things that could be done very quickly, and as a kind of trial, and also to get buy-in from the community. People were horrified by the idea of this project. They were just, what? You're going to close? You're going to do what? Even the mayor, who was initially very, very skeptical, we said, well, we just want to try this for 6 months. And we can always put it back. We're not doing anything permanent. So there were lots of positive benefits, as I said, and the mayor felt empowered and emboldened to say, you know what, this is a great idea. We're going to make it permanent. And so now it's under construction, and this is a rendering by the team that we worked with, which was involved the Times Square Alliance, which is a local business improvement district. Snow Hedda was the architect. The Department of Design and Construction was involved, and DOT was the client. So I managed the team of about 10 city agencies, and it is under construction now. So if you're in New York and in Times Square, you should go take a look. It's getting to look like this. It's not there yet, but we will get there. So the ribbon cutting for that project was at the end of the mayor's term last fall, and this is a picture from the ribbon cutting which was on the first constructed plaza. So we had the support of many, many elected officials. The guy on the left, Tim Tompkins, is the head of the Times Square Times Square Alliance, who manages the space for the city. So on a less grand scale, we thought that plazas and these types of public spaces were important all over the city. So this was in Dumbo in Brooklyn. And when before capital budgets are in place to actually build out these spaces, we found many innovative ways to keep them, to mark the spaces, to keep them fresh, to involve the community. This was a public art painted project that was done by a local artist in Brooklyn. And this map shows the pedestrian plazas and locations throughout the city. They're in various states of either being planned or built as the city is able to fund these spaces. And many of these we're soliciting private partners for some of these. So there's a public-private partnership, and there's a nonprofit group which is managing the maintenance of many of these, which is always an issue for many cities as they move some of these new projects forward. How do you maintain them for the future so that they don't fall into disrepair? So jumping to a completely different topic here, but a kind of related in the way that